is thank you. The way we're going to do that is through our panelists today. So we've got amazing panelists for you, for people working at Twitter, people starting their own companies, people that started not too long ago. So you have a really good overview of the different roles within tech and how you could enter that really. Again, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So whilst the panelists, sorry, I should say, are talking about what they do and the different stuff they do, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. What tonight's this evening session is going to look like. We're going to have the panelists introduce themselves and their journey into tech. So if you have a note, just note your questions in the chat channel. After that, we'll have a breakout room where we'll break it out into two different rooms, front end and back end, for you guys to go deeper into the different spaces. And you'll be able to join that breakout room. Then we'll come back into the main room where you'll be able to actually ask questions a bit more as well. So it's going to be a very interactive session. And yeah, so grab a drink of water wherever you are. Make sure your camera is on whilst we get started. I'm just going to share my screen as we hand over to our first host to tell us a bit more about who they are and how they got into their industry. Okay, so the first person that we have as our host is Jessica Cregg. Jessica, do you want to come to the virtual stage and tell us a bit more about your journey into tech?
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. We appreciate it. So my journey into tech has been a little bit unconventional. I never really thought, I wasn't really sure that there was a kind of a place for me. I didn't study STEM subjects at university, or I didn't kind of focus on them at school. So I was kind of late to technology. So I've been really excited by the prospect of being able to kind of complete certifications and kind of like to upskill in that sort of way. So essentially, I'm a developer advocate. I work at a company called Launch Darkly, and we're a feature management platform that helps you control software through progressive rollouts, kill switches, feature flags, that kind of thing. And a developer advocate is it's like it's a role that's kind of come about in the last kind of 10 years. There's a lot of like mysticism around like what developer advocates do and who they are, but they're kind of in that sort of field of developer relations where you are an active member of the community, of developer community, and you are making sure that you are listening to the concerns of devs, creating helpful content, and just supporting the ecosystem that your company belongs to. And that can take it can take many forms. You can often be working on content. It's great if you work pretty well as an individual contributor. If you are a really big fan of if you're a content creator on the side, being a developer advocate could be a really good fit for you. If you also quite like writing blogs, playing around with proof of concepts, putting together things, and if the idea of being like a solutions engineer or a solutions architect sounds like it's good to you, then developer advocacy could be a really good fit. Sorry, I've just launched into the main body of my presentation. Is that all good?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And just a bit more about your journey, please. I think you said you didn't come from a typical background, but yeah, how did you tell us a bit more about that process with that background you came from and where you learned?
Yeah, of course. So I started off in marketing and communications. My first exposure to technology was through working with technology clients. So I was working in a marketing agency, and some of my clients were developers. I created developer tools, and I've also been one of those people that I found it really difficult to blag it. So I really wanted to be able to like understand what my clients were doing. And the only way to do that was to kind of try out their product. So that involved learning to code and like learning about how technical architecture works. And so my first kind of, so that was kind of like my first exposure to tech. But by necessity, by like needing to understand like what a developer would do with this particular product, I ended up going to tech meetups just after work, and Code Bar, places like that, and started just chatting to the developer community and figuring out that it was a really exciting place to be.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll pause there for a second. And again, if you do have any questions, please do put in the Slack channel. Any question that you have for Jessica, and I'll try and pick that up as we go along. We're going to move to our next panelist, Luis, to share what they do and their journey to get in there.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Luis, and yeah, I make iOS apps. I'm self-employed at the moment, but my kind of journey is kind of, at least to start with, journey into tech was pretty traditional. Like I had, my dad brought a computer home from his work when I was like 8 or something, and I like played around with it and I liked it. And I did computing A-level and an internet computing degree. And then I didn't manage to get into a tech job right away, but after 6 months, I got a tech job. Yeah, so that was kind of how I got started. And then since then, I've been a bit less conventional. And I had a go at freelancing and it didn't really work out. And I got a job as a consultant, which did work out. And then I got a more traditional full-time job. And then I quit that and did freelancing again, and actually traveled quite a bit for quite a while. And then meanwhile, I was trying to build up my own products, which I did in my spare time. And then, yeah, eventually I was able to just work on my own products and not need to do freelancing anymore. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you. So you had a different route to Jessica. So you did a computing level. Did you know you wanted to go into tech as a career, or was that a thing back then?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I was like, I started my degree when the first .com bubble was up, and by the time I'd finished my degree, it burst. So I always knew that was what I wanted to do, that I enjoyed working with computers and coding, and yeah, that was something I always knew I wanted to do as a career. And I feel really lucky that it is something that I'm able to do both as a career and a hobby, because I do enjoy it so much. So yeah.
Thank you. And then last question for you, Louis. So you mentioned like you focus on iPhone apps. What about iPhone? Like, why not an Android? What was that?
It's a good question. So like iPhone, I guess I had an iPhone when I had a friend who, like, when the App Store started and there was this big gold rush, and I had a friend, and he's still my friend, and he made an app, and he was making like more money with this app than he was in his day job. And I was like, oh, well, I should probably try and do that as well. And that was basically how I got into it. And I had an iPhone, and then now it would just be too much for me to do Android as well. I think basically I'm not kind of in the kind of holy Android versus iPhone wars. I don't really have a particular opinion, but for me, I do iPhone, and I just wouldn't be able to switch at this point, I think.
Thank you so much, Louis. We'll pack the questions for now. But again, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. Next, we have Olivia.
Hi, everyone. So my journey was quite untraditional as well. It was in sixth form when I kind of realized I was having that typical moment of I need to decide my life, like right here, right now. It's like in the middle of UCAS applications. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm literally 18. So I originally had applied to do film studies. I just kind of knew deep down that wasn't the route I wanted to go, even though I did enjoy it as a topic. So I decided to do law instead. I did enjoy law because I do like reading and arguing and everything that comes with it. So I did that, completed my law degree at Lancaster, and then decided to do a master's in criminal law. But I still kind of knew that it wasn't really the career route I wanted to do long term. But at the same time, I thought maybe I'm kind of too late to change it. And I was about 2 months of my master's, and I just kind of thought, I don't really want to do this anymore. So I started thinking, what kind of things do I enjoy? And funnily enough, I actually really enjoy jigsaws. And I was like, can I do something with jigsaws and puzzles? And I was talking to a friend and they told me about coding. So I looked it up. I didn't really have any knowledge on it at all. I watched some videos. If anyone knows Coding by Mosh on YouTube, great channel. I thought, yeah, I can get into this. I'm enjoying it. So I carried on learning through YouTube for about 2 months. It was pretty difficult kind of teaching myself because I'd find that I'd miss key concepts sometimes. So I decided to do a boot camp, And that's how I found out about Black Coder. Whereas also I met Tanya, the other panelist. She literally taught me. So this is really full circle. Thank you, Tanya. So yeah, I did the boot camp there. That was 6 months. And then after that, I decided to do a grad scheme where I was able to get some on-the-job experience through joining a company called Capital on Tap, where I'm now a junior developer. And that's my journey.
Great journey, by the way, Olivia. I'm quite interested because you have a very, I guess, unusual journey similar to Jessica, but especially coming from like A levels in English, film studies, sociology. There was no science within that really. So
None at all.
what was that like going from something very, I guess, less scientific, well, if I could say, maybe no, that's not the right word, less, computer based to what talk us through that switch or why you wanted to make that switch? I know you mentioned it already, but
well, in my head, I thought this is going to be really difficult. Like everything I did was kind of a literature based and kind of critical thinking and just kind of reading and writing. So in my head, I was kind of telling myself, I can't really do this. But I kind of realized that there could be like a transfer of skills. So with law, I had to kind of think critically a lot and problem solving. So if I kind of reshaped my mind, it wasn't all that difficult to kind of solving problems on code. So at first it was a difficult adjustment, but I think the more I got into the code and the more I kind of got the muscle memory of actually writing the code, it just eventually clicked.
no, thank you. And the code, you mentioned the Black Coder Bootcamp, which is run by Coding Black Females, and a great program. If you're looking to get into coding, would definitely recommend joining joining the program as soon as you can. So yeah, talk us through, I guess, your experience of that really. Was it difficult? Did you find it quite easy?
I said to someone the other day, it was the best decision that I ever did, because up until then, I didn't really know anything about code. I can see Tanya clapping. It really was the best thing that I did. The structure was just perfect. Everything that I learned really helped build the developer I am today. And I'm still learning, but it really laid down a good base foundation for me. So depending on what we were studying each week, sometimes it was hard, sometimes it was difficult. Things like HTML, CSS, that was like a really good intro. And then we looked at jQuery and I wanted to cry and I was like, this is terrible. And then we moved into React, and React just really clicked for me. And I was like, this is definitely where I should be. So yeah, it kind of varied, but it was all just a learning progress.
Okay. And last question, I'm throwing questions at you. I'm just quite curious about your journey. What advice would you give someone that may be thinking coding is really hard? It's not for someone like myself. I might not have the logical brain. I guess, yeah, what advice would you give to them? Like,
I would say try it first, because that's exactly what I thought. I mean, I left my master's like, I'm just going to try and see if I can code. And I think if I had stuck in that fear that I'm not, like, that space isn't for me, I don't know anything about it, I wouldn't even be where I am today. So just try it, give it a go. It's definitely not easy to begin with, but you really do pick it up. And I don't think learning any skill is impossible as long as you actually try.
Cool. Thank you so much, Olivia, for that insight. We'll come back to your story in a second. I'm going to move next to our next panelist. Introduce themselves, and that's Ayodeji.
All right. Thank you, Leke. Nice meeting with everybody. So currently, I'm an iOS developer, building mobile apps, building applications for mobile phone and fixing bugs. So about my journey, I actually studied electrical electronics engineering. And throughout my undergraduate, I never did any computer science. I think the first time I did computer science was I did something around CS201 in my second level, but I didn't understand it. And I literally didn't pass the course. So that made me just conclude that coding wasn't meant for me. So I was more of an audio engineer, and that was what I did through my campus. And then so when I left the campus, I picked up passion as more of like a project manager. I had to work in a team, and while working with developers, there was need to really understand what they do so that I could also communicate the requirement to the business and to the team, vice versa. So through that, I started getting deep into it. So I started with WordPress at the point, And then after like in 2018, I went into backend development, but I still had some challenges. So I think I met somebody and he just told me that, okay, three things.
No, I think we lost Ayodeji, signal-wise. Okay, let's give him a couple of minutes. Whilst waiting for the Ayodeji, I'm going to see whether we have any more questions in the chat channel.
That was like the turning point for me. So, and so I joined a company called Kanga, and there was an opportunity to lead a team. So I had to pick up the role, and that was how I started iOS development. And that was my journey.
No problem, Ayodeji. Sorry, we lost you for the last part of that. So do you mind just summarizing the, like, we got to the point of you, being a product manager, learning your learning around, web development a little bit. But towards the end, can you just summarize that part of how you picked up a new role as a mobile developer and now how that led to your career?
Oh, okay, all right. So while as a web developer, I started backend, but I wasn't really so good at what I did. Why did I say so? I still wasn't confident on taking up projects and all of that. So what I was basically doing was watching tutorials, trying to replicate, but when I have real stuff to do, I couldn't. So basically I met somebody along my journey, and I said, it told me three things. I think you need to understand the fundamentals. First of all, you need to do a lot of repetition and learn. And then you need to just build something for yourself beyond the tutorials you've watched. So if you have a challenge now, you can Google it. And so that was the turning point for me. And I joined a company called Kanga, and an opportunity came, like they needed somebody to fill the role of an iOS developer who already had an understanding of backend development. So I picked up the role in 2020, and I'd been the iOS lead since then. So basically, so that's how my journey had been.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing journey, Ayodeji. And question for yourself. It sounds like learning played a key role in your journey, and like you said, like practicing maybe what you've seen on YouTube videos and things like that. Like, there's probably not a definite answer. How many hours recommendation would you say you put in a day or a week into that process?
Well, I would say in a day, I need to be very honest with you. I'm not the kind of person that could study for a very long hour. So let's say I put in about 3 hours every day, but I try to be consistent Monday to Friday. So for me, it was more about the consistency, because if I learning it every day makes it stick, rather than doing 7 hours today and then not doing it the following week. So I discovered that, okay, doing that really helped, and then the consistency every day, basically. So the 3 hours was like maybe 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, but it wasn't like at a stretch, yes. So that was it.
Perfect. No, thank you for that insight. So continuous learning and then practice, but making sure you spread yourself and depending on how well you work. Last question, again, similar to what we asked people earlier. I guess you currently are based in Nigeria and you learn how to go from Nigeria, and you work with international companies as well. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the core that would love a similar experience. What advice would you give to them?
Basically, understand the fundamentals. That was what my mistake. So when I mean the fundamentals, the basic concept of programming, and number two, don't be scared to pick up any challenge.
Thank you. Great advice.
Yes, because you think you don't know enough, but you actually know so much. Because when you get up there and you meet other people, you see that basically everybody has an idea of something, and they keep going further to just find information about how to solve the next problem. So
cool. Thank you, Deji. Okay, we'll come back to you again in a sec, depending on questions from the audience. Next person, we have Tanya. Tanya, please, do you want to introduce yourself, what you currently do, and how you got there?
Sure. Hi, my name is Tanya Powell. I am the Co-Chief Technology Officer at Coding Black Females. So my day-to-day is to create the technology, strategy, and vision for the largest group of Black female technologists in the UK. So that's building up apps, being in charge of all of our crazy amount of data that we have involved in the community. We're building up a bunch of internal apps for our students, because we run a bunch of training courses as well and events, making sure that all the technology that we are using and that needs to be built for us, basically the decisions come through me before they get released out to you all, our community. And my journey, so I do have kind of a traditional journey into tech, but I went like that. I didn't go straight path to get there. So I started off, I've got a BSc in media production. So I did a tiny bit of HTML, CSS in that, but completely dismissed it. And then I went to work in TV for several years in scheduling. And as many people probably know, when you have internal tools, they're just trash. They're usually really, really bad. And our internal tools were so bad that half my team had RSI. Only 6 out of 12 people could be allowed into the system at any given moment. The rest of my team thought that this was acceptable, except for me. And I'm an impatient person, and I was like, no, we can't be dealing with this. This is inefficient. So I demanded to speak to people who can make a difference. Turns out that was for developers. I didn't even know a developer was a thing at this point. I just went to them with my list of complaints, which I now know are called bugs. I had no idea at the time. And I was like, fix them. Until they're fixed, or at least I'm satisfied, I'm just not going to leave you alone, because now I've got access to you, which means I'm going to become your nightmare. So I was allowed to sit with them for like a year, one day a week for a year, to what I now realized was analyze things. So I became an informal business analyst for them for free. I didn't realize. And I was doing a bunch of QA for them as well. So I did a bunch of manual testing. And one day, one of the devs was like, you're actually quite a logical person. Have you ever thought about working in technology? And I was like, no, I'm too cute for that, sorry. Until I went home and realized how much they were earning. And I was like, you know what, maybe this tech thing is for me. They say that I'm logical, maybe I'll give it a go. So I immediately signed up for a master's in software engineering with no experience. So when I turned up to my first day of classes, I was in for a very rude awakening when I was like, oh, so it's not HTML and CSS. Like, it's not a visual thing. You want me to, I don't know, use this thing called a command line. What you asked me to do? It was a massive, massive shock. But I survived. And I was this close to getting a distinction. If I paid a little bit more attention, maybe I would have got that distinction. At the end of it, my company at the time were like, would you like to stay? And I was like, nope, I'm skilled now. I'm out. Bye, good luck fixing all those problems that I've been telling you about for years. So then I moved into working in gambling, still can't gamble, but I worked at a gambling company for many, many years, working on different teams, games teams, back-end teams, data warehouse. And then I landed on a front-end team, which I spent a decent amount of time on. So when I joined that front-end team, we were using the beta version of React. So React wasn't even in production yet, but we were using it in production, like a bunch of crazy people. And then after that, focused more on front-end technology, still dabbled in back-end every now and again, because everyone loves an API. And on the side, I was always working on community-driven projects, which is how I ended up at Coding Black Females, actually. Just out of curiosity, turning up to a meetup one day. I remember actually coming to a meetup one day, and there were a bunch of people wanting to work on a side project. They're like, we want to continue learning. We want to work on a side project. We don't know where to start. I walked over to the whiteboard, got a pen, just started drawing diagrams for them, and drew a really quick technical architecture diagram. I was like, here you go. Here's the beginning of your application. Good luck with it. And what I didn't realize was people were watching me do this and I'm like, oh, hey, she could be a technical architect. So I moved into more technical architecture, and last year became a CTO. That's my journey.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So much insight you dropped within that few sessions. And like, I don't know if people that joined earlier would have heard how Tanya actually teaches people how to code through the Coding Black Females bootcamp as well. And 2 people currently on our panelists have been, learning to what you've taught people. So I think you're one of the perfect people, if there's such a thing to have on this panelist. I like something you said earlier. You said, you're too cute for that. But actually, that probably touched on, an image. When you said software developer, right, there's an image that people have in their head. Would you like to speak on that? Like, what should a software developer look like in your opinion? Oh, is Tanya still there? Oh, can everyone else hear me? Okay, I think we lost Tanya for a second. So we'll pause and we'll come back to Tanya when she's back. So we'll move on to our next panelist. And that's Mark. Mark, if you're there, please join us on the virtual stage.
Hi, Mac. Really excited to hear all these stories, super inspiring. And I work at Twitter and I do build large scale real-time APIs. So I work a lot with our developer relations people that do similar jobs to what Jessica described, where they realize what developers need and want from Twitter. And then me and my team works to build some of those products and things. My background, I studied biomedical engineering first. I really liked the idea of computers, but I had this image of anybody who becomes a software engineer or a developer must be somebody who's been coding since they were 6 years old and already know everything before they start studying it. And that was really intimidating to me because I didn't know much about it. So I studied a different kind of engineering in my undergrad. And then when I was getting my master's, I really enjoyed some machine learning classes that I took. So using that, I went and became a data scientist for 2 years, which is not the same as a software engineer. There's not a lot of coding in data science. It's more statistics and using Excel sheets and maybe a little bit of coding in Python. But then while I was doing that data science work, I worked with some older engineers who became big mentors to me. And this is one of the most valuable things to me was getting a mentor or two that I could ask all my dumb questions to. And they were really great to answer the most simple questions of like, what is the command line? And what is a compiler? How does this thing on a computer turn into something that runs? And through that, I learned how to code, and then ended up switching to Twitter about 4 years ago. And I was really nervous about that switch because I thought I would be resetting my career, going back to becoming a software engineer instead of a data scientist. But turns out that is not a concern at all. And software engineers make lots of money. And it was a really great switch for me. And they also treat their people really well. So it's been fantastic. I also, to get that first interview, had a referral from somebody who was a friend of mine. And I was super nervous to ask him for a referral because we hadn't worked together. We were just friends for a year or two. But after I asked him, he was really enthusiastic to give it. Turns out there's also referral benefits for people to give referrals. So I found out it's a good idea to reach out to your friends who work at a company to ask for referrals, because usually they're willing to do so and to talk to you at least about what the company's like. And then at Twitter, I've been an individual contributor for 3 of those years and a tech lead for 1 of the years, and worked on 2 different teams. It's just been a great experience there.
Thank you so much for that insight. I'm sure a lot of people ask loads of questions about what it's like to work at Twitter for you as one of those aspirational companies to work at, really. You touched on something there, and I'd probably like to pick the first one. This idea of like you having an image of someone working in tech, especially coding from a very young age, and you coming in maybe later on within the years. I guess maybe a question that's probably relevant to all our panelists, but starting with you. Was there like a bit of imposter syndrome there, and like how did you overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I knew a couple of computer science majors who knew how to code before they started college, and seemed like they just always knew how to code and were coding in their free time. And I think that the thing that helped combat it was just realizing that that's only one type of software engineer, and there's a huge demand for people who know how to code, and it presents value everywhere. And I think that that one image isn't the only one. Like, I loved the way Olivia talked about liking jigsaw puzzles, and somebody saying, well, that's really similar to coding. And I think kind of realizing some of those different ways at looking at coding, that it's not just the person who loves to build code practice in their free time. Like, I prefer to do a lot of other things in my free time, but it can be just a fun thing to do at work. That's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle.
Thank you so much. We'll post that with questions from Mark and our panelists. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and have everyone on stage again. So a chance for people to ask specific questions. If you haven't yet, please put your question on the channel. I'm just gonna have a look at questions that people have. Okay. So Shade got a question. I'm not sure who was that related to. I don't know if you're feeling brave, Shade, to ask the question directly to our panelists, and who you wanted to ask the question.
Sure. I was just a question about which master's degree you attended after undergrad to learn more programming and computer software engineering.
And was that too?
It was for Tanya, but Mark, I believe, can also answer as well.
I can go.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So yeah, it was software engineering.
Okay, was it at a specific university or
Yeah, so
online
I did
program?
it at the University of Westminster in central London. It had a heavy emphasis of data structures and algorithms. So I spent a lot of time writing algorithms on pen and paper, which was not fun.
Okay, great. Oh, this sounds tough.
It was worth it, definitely worthwhile.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. I'm just going to summarize where we are so far, because I know probably people joined later on at different point in the journey. So this event is hosted by Coding Black Females, Coding Black Females and Black Valley. Coding Black Females was started in 2017. One of the co-founders here, Tanya, and a lovely lady called Charlene. They have been leading the space in supporting Black females, especially in the UK, to get into tech. They run different coding boot camps, like meetup events. They're great organizations. Do check them out. If you're based in the Midlands, I think they're running a coding boot camp for people based in the Midlands. I'm sure there's other coding boot camps or other opportunities to get involved with what they do. We are Black Valley. We work with the best Black talent to accelerate their learning by pairing them up with a mentor and the ideas for them to either become better at what they do, get a better job, or start their own tech startup. So that's kind of the space that we play in. And the reason we decided to put this event together, we realized that for one, people applying to our program are not quite sure what area in tech they wanted to go into. And they just said, we want a mentor, but actually, what area within tech do you want a mentor? So this idea was about demystifying the different career routes that people take into tech. So our audience currently run through the different things they've done. And hopefully, as you guys could see, there's no one way into getting into coding. There's no one way that someone working in coding looks like. Again, if you have any specific questions, please put them in the chat and I'll ask that question as well. So there's a question, yes, so we're going to take two questions here. Starting from one to Mark. How did you become a data scientist? That's question one. And two, what and how were some of your day-to-day tasks? So question one, how did you become a data scientist? Question two, what and where some of your day-to-day tasks?
Yeah, so my master's was in electrical engineering, and during that you could pick a lot of the classes that you wanted to choose. And I just enjoyed my first intro to machine learning class. So I ended up selecting 4 or 5 machine learning and data science oriented classes. And then afterwards, during all my interviews for companies, ended up talking a lot to machine learning and kind of went into more of a data science role where my master's was officially focused on signal processing. So you might have expected that direction instead, but ended up in a data science background. And seems like in my experience, there's 2 types of data scientists that I've at least encountered. One is kind of the more academic type, which is what I was. So we were doing a lot of things that you might read cool articles about. So trying to predict people's personality based on the way they would naturally write was a project I worked on, where this might have some overlap with things you hear about people trying to solve board games or beat people in chess or Go, things like that. It doesn't have huge obvious applications, and the more common data scientist would be somebody who does a lot of business intelligence. So this is probably more similar to if you know about like industrial engineering or business intelligence. So these are people who would try to use some sort of data science algorithm to take in our business metrics and figure out what our strategy should be based on that. Those are the data scientists that I interact with at Twitter and encounter, and they do a lot less of the cutting edge algorithm design day to day, and do a lot more of begging teams to give them data and to build things to get the data, and then might be something as simple as doing an Excel model, or occasionally being able to do some cool machine learning projects.
Thank you, Mark. I hope that answers your question. And we've got another question here. I think this is to everyone. So what advice, we probably to 2 or 3 people, what advice do you have for any brand new junior developers going through the horrible process of applying for jobs whilst trying to stay sane? I'll probably start with maybe Olivia and Jessica first, and then we'll pick one other person.
The advice that I would give is keep track of the interviews that you do. My mentor gave me this advice actually, and it ended up being great advice. So any interview I did, she was like, note down the questions, note down the answers that you get, and you can kind of learn from that, because it might get repetitive and it kind of helps you build a better answer if you get asked the same question next time. Also, just ask for feedback, most definitely. If you apply for somewhere and you don't hear back, maybe just send a second email, try and get a follow-up. Most people tend to just leave it, maybe out of politeness or etiquette, but definitely follow up. And also, if you do get rejected, get feedback. Those are definitely good steps just for your own personal growth as well. And as for staying sane, that's a difficult one. I want to say just know that it will definitely work out, but when I got told that, I did a bit of an eye roll, yeah, but it's still a long process, but it actually will work out. So just keep applying, keep trying, and take breaks, because it's really easy to get burnout when you're applying to so many things so many times a day. And I think when you're just stuck in that applying kind of mindset, you forget that you really do need a break, and all you're thinking about is projections. But take a break and just breathe a little, and it will work out. Hope that doesn't sound generic, but it's true.
That's a really good advice. Thank you, Olivia. So feedback and track what you're applying for, and make sure you take breaks, because we don't want burnouts in that process. Thank you for that advice, Olivia. And Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, I need to co-sign every single thing you said there, Olivia. You're so right. I think we always forget that applying to jobs, and also the technical interviewing process itself, is its own skill set. There are people who are completely the work on that, and that it's a legitimate practice to start interviewing even when you're not looking for a job, which I know sounds like the grimmest possible thing to do, and is something that, if I'm honest, I don't really often have strength for. But there are some great services out there. There's one called PRAMP, P-R-A-M-P, and that's a service where it conducts mock interviews in the style that a lot of fan companies often use, so you can kind of train up and test yourself and get some useful feedback in a safe environment. And just kind of remembering the process. This is a data visualization that someone I know put together of their job application process, and yeah, it's definitely not linear.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Olivia. If any other panelists want to add their opinion to that process or based on their experience, that would be great.
All right. Let me just add to what everyone has said. So I think I've been there actually also, where especially when you're at junior level and mid level of your career, and you're trying to get a better opportunity, or you're trying to switch into the system. I think one of the few things that have really helped me was, I think there are 2 challenges from my experience. The challenge of getting an interview, and then the challenge of scaling through the interview. So I believe, okay, for the first one, the challenge of getting an interview, I think one of the first thing I did was getting my portfolio up, making sure my resume was good. I began writing. I made my LinkedIn optimized such that the keywords required by recruiters were getting me noticed. I also tried reaching out I looked at the company I wanted to work in, and I tried getting out to them through LinkedIn, and just so if then I wanted to be a backend developer, so I looked for someone in the company that is a backend developer, and then the HR in the company, and then I it really helped. Then getting into the interview, I think it was said already. So I won't lie to you, my first 2 interviews, I really messed up. So, but I realized that as I did it, the more you did, the more you become confident. And then for every interviews you fail, you go back and then you solve it and try to know why you failed. And I realized that for every interview that I failed, for that stage, when I go back to really learn, I skate through the interview until I got my first job and all of that. So I think those 2 things were really helpful. So, yeah.
No, thank you so much, Ayodeji. Those are really good feedback. Again, I just to kind of like summarize what you said, I thought was really good. It's about optimizing yourself. So you talk about LinkedIn profile, making sure that's up to date, your CV, making sure that's up to date. You talked about writing as well. So, maybe, your project, GitHubs. So for those that are familiar with that, making sure that's up to date and maybe writing articles on Medium. Yeah, so it sounds like you took a very well-rounded approach to the process. And then you talk about the interview process as well, because that's a different skill. It's one thing to get the interview, and then once you're in the interview, making sure you make the most of it. I really like that. And I like one on the point that you mentioned around targeting key people working at those companies and asking them questions. People love to give their time. So, if you're direct about what you want their time for, they're likely to give you their time. Thank you for that. Another question. So this question, I think, it said, can you give tips on networking and how you would advise cold emailing people on social media? I'll give an opinion on this, and then maybe one person from our panelists to answer that as well. For me, I think be really clear with your ask. So if you're reaching out to someone that's, I guess maybe an influencer within the space, or someone that's like doing something with the space, chances are they get a lot of requests, similar to you. So you have to kind of stand out, right? So be really clear with your ask. Again, people like to hear nice things about themselves. So maybe lead with something nice about what you've seen them do. Maybe you've read an article about them somewhere, you've seen them do an event, they were hosting an event. Like for now, I'm sorry guys, you're probably going to get a lot of requests. There's like 6 panelists here that giving a talk, right? You could reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, oh, I just heard you speak at the Black Valley and Coding Black Female event. I love this point that you said. It'd be great to get 15 minutes with you. It would be quite unlikely that they would say no to that, because you made a direct contact, you give them like positive feedback about what they do, and people like to hear good stuff about themselves. So that's what I would say. Like, be really direct with your ask. Lead with something nice about them as well if you can, and be genuine about that. There's no point in saying, oh, you're amazing, but actually you've never seen me speak, so how do you know if I'm amazing? That's with my 2 cents on that. Any other panelists and any other comment around that?
I guess the one thing that I've found is in networking, people, I feel like I've heard people emphasize a lot reaching out to lots of people, and I've found a lot of personal value from having a few people, 1 to 3 people that I have a much closer relationship with, like a mentor that I can, go to with all my questions and feel really trusting towards. So I would just emphasize trying to find a mentor in addition to just a broad network.
Thank you. And we run a mentoring program. So if you do want to reach out to us when that happens, let us know. Coding Black Females run different boot camps and different events as well that you can go to. So do check out both our website. We're just going to take 2 more questions. So the 2 last questions on this channel will be the last questions, I think, before we go into breakout rooms. The first question says, I'm a senior system analyst. I can code in multiple languages, and I feel like it's time for me to switch into a dev role. Do you think I need to go into a junior role, or do you think I could go for mid-level roles? I'm a senior system analyst. I can't code in multiple languages. I feel like it's time for me to switch into a dev role. Do you think I need to go into a junior role, or do you think I could go for mid-level roles? Maybe Tanya could lead us with this.
Yeah, it depends on you really, because being a dev is not just can I write code, but how do I solve the problem? Give me a language, say it's JavaScript. There's 1,000 different ways to solve one problem with JavaScript. But and this is how you can tell that the experience level. Am I going to write it in the most efficient way? Is it going to be readable? How much help do I need with it? So it's not just about knowing how to code, but actually how do you solve the problem? And the more experience you have with solving problems using code, that's when you start bumping up. Because everyone here can write code. Doesn't mean you can write efficient code or code that's going to solve that particular problem. I can see something on Stack Overflow, copy and paste it, it's going to work. But is it actually solving the problem that I'm trying to solve? So that's what really like distinguishes for levels, how you solve that problem, not I can write code.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone, maybe one more person on that, if you have anything else?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know whether it's possible in your current role, but I think the easiest thing to do would be to try and look for a job as a developer in your current company, because then you'll be able to do that kind of, it will just be easier to speak to people, they'll trust you, they'll know you, they'll like you. Maybe you can say, oh, what if I did it one day a week or something like that? And then before you know it, you're doing that full time. And then if you want to jump ship to another company, then you can. So that's not necessarily going to be possible, but if it is, that will, I think, will be the easiest way.
Yeah, I coincide with that, especially because you got domain knowledge, and domain knowledge is so powerful. That's how I switched so many teams in my first job. I just had domain knowledge. They were like, oh, we need someone who understands X, Y, and Z to work on this exciting project. And I was like, I have 2 months experience, but who cares? I've been on that team. I have domain knowledge. And this took a chance on me.
Thank you, guys. Last question we're going to take before we go into our breakout rooms. Hi, everyone. I've just started to learn about coding, HTML, and CSS languages. At the moment, I was wondering what other languages are most in demand to be considered for a role of a web designer later on. So I'll read that again. Hi, everyone. I've just started to learn about coding, HTML, and CSS languages at the moment. And I was wondering what other languages are most in demand to be considered for as a role of a web designer later on. I guess that question actually in twofold. One, if you could answer that question directly, and two, should people learn many languages or should they focus on one?
I can answer that question in one word: JavaScript. It's the most popular language, JavaScript. It fuels the web. No other language can be used in a browser, only JavaScript. So JavaScript.
Cool. Is that a concept? I could see a few nodding of head. Does anyone else have a different opinion to that, or want to second what Tanya just said?
Definitely second. I mean, JavaScript, you can learn Node on the back end, work on a framework like React on the front end, just like Olivia was talking about earlier. 95% of the web is JavaScript.
Okay.
Runs on it.
Cool. Seems quite decisive. Mac, were you just say something else?
I was I totally agree, because the question said for a web designer later on, and just in case people aren't aware, like if you want to be a backend developer and know that's what you want to do, then it would be a different answer, and it would be a more complex answer because there's lots of languages for backend. Perfect.
Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. I'm not a technical person myself, so it's great to have you guys' knowledge to add to that. Okay, what we're gonna do now is really simple. So you've had different insights into people's role, and you've been able to ask some questions. For most of you, especially when I first started within this space, I started in about front end, back end, full stack, and it just felt like, yeah, what are they talking about? But we want again to break that a little bit further. So we're gonna have 2 breakout rooms, front end and back end. So if you're interested, I guess, in front end and exploring more, you simply join the front end breakout rooms, and some of our panelists will be there. If you're interested in in back end, you join the back end room. We're just going to set up those rooms. We've set up those rooms for us. I need to, can people join manually? How does it work?
Yeah, so you just press the name of the room and then press join.
Perfect. Thank you, Abin. So we're going to be there for like 20 minutes, and it's a chance for you to just ask questions to the panelists within those rooms. As Abin explained, you just click on the room. So there's front end and back end, and you click on join. So it should be quite straightforward. So depending on your interest, front end, again, I'm not a technical expert, so front end is what we see. So if you go on the coding backfinger website, so everything that you see, the UX UI is what we call front end. So if you're interested in that space, that's where you join. If you're interested in back end, is the behind the scenes part, So think about a restaurant. Again, I don't know what I'm trying to explain it. I'm not even technical. A restaurant, the food is the front end. The back end is all the ingredients, basically. So join the appropriate room for yourself. So our panelists as well, if you could click on the ones that you want to give your opinion on. So click on the room, front end, if you want to join the front end room to give you expertise. Back end is proving very, very popular in a lot of people in the back end room. I'm taking count 17 people in the back end room, 5 people in the front end room. Can we get more people in the front end room? Yes, 9 people in the front end room, 20 people in the back end room. Going. 12 people in the front end room. Can we get that up? 14 people in the front end room. Sorry, I'm getting bored. It's late at night. But yes, click on the room that you want to join, and you should be able to join that room for more insights in that room. Cool. We still got a few people here. Is that a case of people don't want to go into the breakout rooms, or you're happy to be in here? So click on either front end or back end, and then you could join the room and click on join to join the room. Okay, I think everyone in this room now should hopefully know the instructions. So we're just going to breakout rooms to understand a bit deeper the difference between front end and back end. So depending on which one you're interested in, click on front end to join the front end room and back end to join the back end room. It feels quite equal now, 30 back end and 20 front end. Yeah, got them in the end. Set the timer. Black Valley team, thank you guys for joining. Maybe if you want to check out each room, see how they're doing, and then you could pop back in here. You don't have to stay for the 20 minutes, just see how they're getting on. So if maybe we have, I mean, you guys could decide whichever one you want to join, really. Tanya, what are you thinking?
I'm feeling back in. Let's jump in. I'm surprised it's so much more popular.
Really?
Front end is where people are at.
Yeah, it's a lot more popular actually. There's about 30 people.
Okay.
And then I used to be a project manager. So, but currently I'm in iOS.
Those of you that don't know, we're just catching up about Will Smith and the Oscars. If you haven't, yeah, definitely switch on the news. I'm sure you would have seen it, except Tiger Lily, which for whatever reason didn't know that happened. But hopefully, the breakout room has been really useful. I know some of the Black Valley team were jumping into breakout rooms, and they found that quite engaging, and you guys were asking questions. We've got roughly about 10 minutes left, so we're just gonna bring the panelists back again. For a chance for you guys to maybe, for them to give their last advice, really, and then for you to ask any question that you might have for the panelists. So just give us a sec whilst we get that set up again. Perfect. I will let Abin do the magic behind the scene to set up the nice spotlight for the panelists. I guess first of all, from our panelists, because I think some people will be in the front end room, some people will be in the back end room and not quite sure what room they wanted to be in. So I think I try to do it justice, right? So maybe from your point of view, what is front end and what is back end? Anyone could jump in?
I'd say front end is about how websites appear to the user and how the way that they're developed helps the user interact with those sites. And it kind of, you decide on like a design style, like a template that kind of marks the website out as unique from other websites. Whereas backend is more about programming and like database storage and just like, yeah, just making sure that the app actually works and can reach like many users. That's how I define the difference between the two.
Thank you. That's what I was saying. Who was that, by the way?
Oh, it's Rebecca. I don't have my camera on at the moment, but
No worries.
hello.
Thank you for explaining that, Rebecca.
Yeah, no problem.
I think that's well explained. Is there any other thing that the panelists want to say before we move away from that?
I like that description a lot. I think a tactical way of dividing it is almost every website has code that runs on your phone or on your browser, and then it has things that happen in a data center or in the cloud. And the back end is everything that happens in the data center or in the cloud. And then the front end is everything that happens on your phone or on the web browser. But all those tactical points about dealing with databases and microservices on the back end and dealing with product requirements and colors on the front end are really important.
Good. Before we move on to the next panel question, I guess you guys were in two different rooms, front end or back end. What was the most interesting discussion you had in the front end room and the most interesting discussion you had in the back end room?
I think back end we were talking a lot about forging a path, and we were talking a little bit about how it can sometimes be like the misconceptions around which one is more challenging, and in fact they're actually both very complex, and it's just about the domain in which you're kind of working in. But yeah, I think we were kind of mainly working on defining the differences and just kind of like creating your own personal roadmap to upskilling as an engineer.
Great, thank you. And I think that's actually really interesting. I think there's like a misconception around maybe front end being easier, especially for new developers. So thank you for that. And then front end and any interesting discussion in that room? You guys shy?
We spoke about, if you have a little bit of experience with some front end languages, what's the best way to upskill yourself at like a relatively rapid pace? So knowing JavaScript and knowing the fundamentals of JavaScript will get you quite far, because then you can look into different frameworks. And we're discussing whether it's right to jump straight into a boot camp, or if you should do some like self-learning initially to decide if it's the right path for you. And yeah, just had a bit of advice from the panelists about that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to finish with a question for the panelists. To wrap it up, I'm going to go each of the panelists, right? Starting with Jessica. I want you to imagine way back to young Jessica, if I could say that, studying English literature at university. Knowing what you know now about where your career has landed you, what advice would you give to that young Jessica?
But you will always be bad at, or usually be bad at something before you're good at it. So don't be afraid to be bad at something, because that's your way to kind of path to mastery. So yeah, just being less afraid to suck at the start.
Cool, thank you. That's a good advice. Don't be afraid to suck at the start. Can we say that word? I think we can. Again, same question to Louis. Going back to you doing your A-level computing, I know you've known you want to be working tech for a while. What advice would you give that to young Louis?
I guess like whenever you take big risks or just risks, those things will probably not turn out how you expect, but they'll always turn out as well or better than you expect, just differently. So yeah, that's how I look at it. Yeah, it's worth it. You've always got to take a few risks or do things that are uncomfortable, and that might not go how you think, but that doesn't mean that's not the same as it going badly. So yeah, take the risks and then enjoy how it turns out.
Thank you, Louise. Love that. Take risk and enjoy how it turns out. Again, same question to Olivia. Going back to your A-levels, doing English film studies and sociology, and now you're an engineer. So what advice would you give to young Olivia?
I think I would tell myself that there is a thing called imposter syndrome and prepare yourself for it. Because going from the kind of language literature-based stuff I did straight into tech, I got hit with that really hard and I didn't really know what it was. So I really did feel like an imposter, but I wasn't. It was just me making my way into tech and learning. So yeah, I would prepare young Olivia for that because it's real, but you can definitely overcome it.
Cool, thank you. Similar vein, Ayodeji, studying electronic engineering whilst doing your degree. Looking back at your journey, so far and what you're doing now, and actually advising the people about how to get into tech, and what advice would you give to young Ayodeji in University of Nigeria studying?
All right, thank you so much. So I would say when you start, don't be stuck in the tutorial loop. That was one major challenge. Just doing tutorials, and it was get on to a project, start something, make mistakes, and then there are lots of open source projects. For example, on GitHub, pull it, study the code line, try to understand how the logging was implemented down to the API consumption and the likes. So that would really help you go into it. So I think that would be what I would have done again if I were to start.
Thank you. Great advice. I think you always come with the practical advice. Thank you for that. So, get stuck into GitHub, practice. And Tanya, again, same advice. Young Tanya doing BSc media production, looking at where you are now, working within tech, co-founding your organization that's impacting loads of lives. Did you see that coming first? And what advice would you give yourself?
No way did I see that coming. My advice to my younger self would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't try and be a perfectionist. Don't be so much in your head. Just take a deep breath, let go, and be open to every opportunity that comes your way. Because many times I was my own resistance. If I just been a bit more open, a little less in my head, things would be a lot easier. Would have been a lot easier for me.
Perfect, thank you. And lastly, Mark, working at Twitter now, probably one of the aspirational tech companies you work for. Going back to your earlier days, studying at Georgia Tech, biomedical engineering, what advice would you give yourself?
I think I would say, similar to what everybody else has said, don't be afraid to be bad at something and to move into something new. And then I would have said, find a mentor who I can be honest with, and be honest about how bad I am at stuff, so that they can help me to learn.
Thank you. All our lovely panelists. We only just two people, just because we've got a bit of time. Most of our audience in the room are quite at the early stage of their career and trying to figure it out. I'm going to actually pick two people, if that's okay. Tanya, what would you tell people at the early stage trying to figure out going into an industry? And then after Tanya, we're going to go Olivia. So prepare yourself, Olivia, as well.
What advice to give? Meet as many people as you can. Go to as many events as possible, because there's 1,000 jobs in technology, and a quick way to figure out if something may not be for you is to go and speak to someone who's doing that job at the moment. Find out what their day-to-day is like, what they actually do, because you might be like, this sounds interesting, let me look into it more, or nah, it's not for me, cross it off my list. So go speak to people, go to as many events as possible. Just immerse yourself into this crazy world.
Thank you, Tanya. And a lot of people have been asking already, where are the next Coding Black Females bootcamp, and how can people sign up?
There are so many events and training courses, I actually can't keep up to date. I get confused every single day. I just suggest you go to the Coding Black Females website and have a look. I'm pretty sure we've got an event, Rachel, probably Wednesday, right? We have one almost every Wednesday for sure.
We have loads of speed networking as well, virtual and in person. We have an in-person event that we're announcing tomorrow as well. It's going to be a huge party because CBF is turning 5. So if you want to join us for that, you are welcome to. It will be in London. So yeah, that'll be it. If for other events as well, you can find out events.codingblackfemales.com. So yeah.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Rachel. And Olivia, any last word of advice to people in the audience?
Yeah, following from what Tanya said, once you are sure, the best thing you probably can do, or what I did, is find a mentor. Shout out to the one that Black Valley is doing as well. A mentor is a great way to kind of stay on track with the journey and kind of help you reflect with yourself and give you advice that you didn't know existed or that you would need. But yeah, getting a mentor is definitely one of the best things that I did, and I highly recommend it to anyone in the early stages if they're sure that tech is the route they want to take.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all our panelists. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Deji. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Olivia. You've taken that time out of your evening to give us your insight into your career journey, and it's great to hear, the different routes that you guys have taken. It's been such a pleasure to have you guys as our panelists. We're grateful for that, and hopefully the audience have enjoyed it. We've recorded most of this event, so we'll follow up with people that registered for the event and send you the cloud recording for you to listen to in your own time. As mentioned already, there are great ways to get into tech. There's not one route. Hopefully you could see it by the different journeys all our panelists have had, from people, doing, I guess, non-technical or scientific careers to where they are now. So, and, everyone has that imposter syndrome. I found it interesting that, Mark at Twitter as well mentioned that he still suffers from the imposter syndrome. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing now, just realize this space is for you. And we want you to be in this space. So do take up this space. Look at opportunities that coding Black females have. They've got loads of things happening at the moment. We have a mentoring program that we run, but we're just reshaping what that looks like at the moment. So we're taking a pause, but we'll be in touch with more information what that looks like. It's been great, but we look forward to. Do follow us, Black Valley. Let me plug us as well. On Instagram, Black Valley HQ, on Twitter, Black Valley HQ, on LinkedIn, Black Valley, and go on our website, blackvalley.co.uk. We're just reshaping what we do moving forward, but we'll be in touch with more information soon about what we do. Essentially, we want to work with the best Black talent to get into tech, and we want to work with Black people with a startup idea to launch a tech startup idea. I've been your host, Leke. It's been great having you guys. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to Tanya and the wonderful Coding Black Females for co-hosting the event with us. Have a great evening, everyone, and we will see you at the next event hopefully soon.
Thank you.